Okay, perfect. Anyways, if I can ask everyone to mute themselves while I'm talking, and then you can unmute yourself when it's your turn, which I promise there will definitely be time for that. But yeah, anyways, hi guys, my name is Crystal. I am the executive producer at InterIntellect, meaning I take care of all production and all host care. And yeah, I'll be running these trainings so that any member of the public can get an idea of how InterIntellect works on the host level. And yeah, to just come and be really candid about your anxieties about hosting, and hopefully, you can walk out after feeling a bit more empowered to host. And yeah, this will be a place for us to talk very candidly about it. I'll be presenting a bit about like different topics throughout the next few weeks, but you can also add your own questions and you can ask me. I'm very approachable. So yeah. So I actually wanted to actually open this and kind of have this training be a bit more like a salon. And I would love to like go around the room and have people like, say your name, if you're already an existing host or if you're like a potential host, uh, maybe like where you're located, your curiosities about the community, or here, I'll actually write all this down too, but your curiosities about the community and perhaps what you want to learn about being a host and what that means. So I'm gonna actually just write that down real quick. All right, so that's in the chat in case anyone forgets. And yeah, we'll just do like, I guess we can just go popcorn style, like one person goes and then calls on someone else in the room. And then when we're all done, I'll start talking about the 4 rules of hosting and answer some of the questions that were on the listing. And then we can open it for also like everyone to maybe go around and like say what other questions remain or what takeaways. So yeah, anyways, I guess I can start with myself. But yeah, so I'm Crystal, the exec producer, and I do host. And what drew me to the community was, I think this is like one of the only spaces I've seen like continuously is generative. Like people come back and like have conversations together. And, there's a sense of respect here. And I mean, I just think that it's kind of rare to find a space like this these days. And yeah, it's just really motivating to be around. And I guess I don't have that many questions about being a host, but if I'm being really transparent, I'm really new to hosting as well. I joined InterIntellect in October, and that was when I first started hosting too. And I found that I guess I have a knack for it, but I've kind of like learned a lot from reading the website and making it up as I go along. So a lot of my insight is like fresh, but also open to like revision and open to like, learning from other people. So like, I'm not like a seasoned pro either. I'm just maybe like 10% more along the way than, other people that haven't hosted. So there is no hierarchy here. I just happen to be sharing information. Yeah, and with that, I will call on Cassie. You can go next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassie. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm not a host, but I've been an II member since 2021. And what drew me to the space, I think specifically, were just some of the topics that some of the salon topics. So where people would go a lot deeper on certain things I geek out about, and where there was non-judgment around geeking out about said topics. So it might be things around like vulnerability or boundaries or the art of conversation. So I tend to lean more towards like psychological, sociological, interpersonal realm, but and then I just kept coming back because I just appreciated how curious and kind II members are. And like, it's not a place for debate, which is something I am not a fan of, but for really respectful discussion. And it also, as Crystal says, really generative. People are just like asking really thought-provoking questions of themselves and of one another. And my questions around hosting. So by day, I'm an event planner, experience designer. and sort of facilitator, but I still get a lot of anxiety around like, what if no one shows up? That's like event planner worst nightmare. And so I think my question is around like, what do you do if it's a much smaller turnout than you expect? And how do you keep it engaging for a smaller group?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And I will pass off to Anansi.
Can y'all hear me all right? Dope. Uh, yeah, I go by Anansi, birth name Matthew. Um, I am in the Bay Area, which draws me to the II community is it's been showing up on my radar more and more. Gone to a few talks now, and I had a conversation with Crystal about hosting, and that felt good. And then had a conversation with another friend where we just over the course of an hour just gave birth to a whole idea for a salon series. So that's what ended up getting me in this right now. I actually have a lot of experience with like facilitating and hosting and whatnot. But what's got me curious right now is just like, what does it mean to be a host? What is the intention of a host? What does a host do? What does it really mean to be a host? And uh and what does it take to be a good host in an online salon? So yeah, those are my questions. Look forward to learning more. I'll pass it off to uh Ciela.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, hi. And you said my name right, which is amazing. So thank you for that. It's always a crapshoot. So I'm Ciela. I'm also in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I'm not sure exactly how this community came on my radar, but as I started investigating the conversations and topics, I was really intrigued. I really enjoy conversations that really are not directed around finding an answer, but are really more about exploration and perhaps more philosophical in nature. So I feel compelled by that, and I'm very interested to see what I can learn, but also what I can contribute. And Crystal, we had an email exchange about a topic that I want to explore, which is personal to me, but I also feel like is coming up more and more for many people, which is our relationship to work and how that influences our identity or not. So I'm planning to put on a series about this, and also am starting a book project on this topic. Since I left corporate about 2 years ago to go out on my own to be a solo entrepreneur, and it's come with a lot of questioning, which I think is good. I do a lot of facilitation in my work. I'm a leadership development person, so I have a background in facilitation. So my question really is, what's the difference between facilitation and hosting? And I'll pass it on to Trem.
Hi, everyone. I'm Trem. Can you hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So I am drawn to this community because I'm just a naturally curious person. I love to explore different topics, and there's a lot of exciting and interesting talks that have been circulating, and I've been meaning to go to more of them. My questions for hosting is similar to Ciela's question. I do have a background in facilitating women's circles and hosting group healing services, but I'm curious to see what's the difference between facilitating and hosting. I am intending to maybe host a salon with II at some point, and I would love to know what are the typical format of a salon looks like. So we'd love to know some of the tips. Yeah, that's me. And I shall pass on to Cassie.
I've already gone.
Oof, I'm so sorry. Oof. I shall pass on to, let's see, Moria. Did I sound like, did I say your name right?
Yes, that's right. That's right, Maria. Or Kudzu to some of you. Yeah, my name is Maria Parker. Looking at the chat to remember what all I'm supposed to say because I was just listening to you guys. I'm not a host. The intellect community kind of came on my radar, being adjacent to a particular region and just kind of seeing like the kind of conversations that go on there and the kind of attitude of being respectful, being positive, and just, you know, thinking about things together. So I thought it would be probably a really cool environment. And when I saw this, you know, free hosting session, it seemed like a really good way to get some insight into what goes on here typically without necessarily I have been to all the kinds of salons. It's kind of like, what are we going for over here? Also interested in kind of group dynamics, I guess. I really admire when people can kind of keep everybody in flow and making everybody feel good. And I have some level of knack for that. And I would just really like to explore how to expand that. Not even like, yes, it can be useful in formal context, but just in general, I think it can be really powerful to be a person who kind of knows how to take the temperature of the room and keep things going in a way that is fun and feels good for everybody. And this seemed like a place to get some more insight into what some other people think about how to do that. Oh yes, I am passing it off to Rahul.
Hey guys. Yeah, my name is Rahul. I live in San Francisco. And as far as internet intellect goes, I think there's just so I think my interest has basically been about a couple of different ideas, which is that I think there's just so many interesting things in the world, right? So and it's really good to just just speak with someone who is interested and super passionate about something, whatever that something is. And internet intellect strikes me as a place where a group where you have a lot of people who are in a very generative mind space and are very interested in a multitude of topics. So yeah, that's and you know, this I think it just helps strike up some serendipity when people have some level of common interest. So that's been really great. As far as hosting goes, I have not hosted so far, but this is something I'm definitely very interested in. I think like just with my I think with my personality also, like I was just saying, and I was actually just saying when before this conversation started that like I hosted trivia night this week, and it was such a blast, right? I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and so I think when it comes to like learning about hosting here, I think that there is a sense of, well, I think each of us are bringing something to the table, but then there's also like a common like decorum of the group itself, and trying to understand, you know, what we just make for good hosting. You know, not just in terms of topics, but also like say the way we carry out one of these events. Like actually, one of my first events, Crystal happened to be in the Bay Area, and I joined her event, and it was pretty cool to like, you know, see her, you know, the way she was conducting herself and conducting the group. And I was like, hey, this resonates with me, you know, and that's been fun. So yeah, that's what I'm at, and I'm gonna pass it on to let's see, how do I say your name? Is it Topi or Toppy? How do I say your name?
Yeah, it's pronounced Topa. Thank you.
Toppa. Okay, all right, cool, thank you.
Yeah, so name is Topa. I'm not a current host, and sorry for the background noise. But I have been thinking about hosting for a few months now. But what really drew me to Intellect was just, you know, this really interesting platform that just gives you the chance to talk about really anything that matters to you, or, you know, you think about a lot. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time thinking existential terms and psychoanalyzing yourself and culture and love when others indulge you in these conversations. And I think Intellect kind of strikes this right balance between intellectual and casual yet structured. And especially now, I think a lot about social connection and community, which I kind of provide a solution for, but also provides an outlet to talk about. So those are the themes that I probably will focus on. And just questions I have about hosting. I mean, I was really just looking to learn about best practices around hosting. For example, I heard Rahul talk about slides and realized that could be another helpful practice I didn't think about. One question on my mind, however, is just how to draw insights from others, particularly those who may not be inclined to speak. So that's something I think about. Let's see, I will pass it on. I don't think Yuri has gone.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Yuri, and I'm an event producer here at Interintellect. And why I'm here is because I'm a fan of the idea of exchanging thoughts and learning new information by discussing it with people who are passionate about it. And Interintellect provides me with that incredible opportunity. And also at the same time, I'm a potential host, so I'm the same as you and hope to host some events soon. And I'll pass on to Nikki, who is another Interintellect member. He doesn't have his name here.
Hey, I thought I would have my name here. I'm not sure why that's wrong. I'm Nikki. I joined the Interintellect team last month, community manager. And I've never actually hosted a salon before, but I'm going to be hosting a lot. So, and with all you guys, so definitely have a lot to learn. I'm not really used to hosting stuff. I feel like growing up at home, didn't really, like, my parents didn't used to like host much, and I sort of like took that on from them. But since moving out, I've tried to like focus a bit more on enjoying hosting people, and lately that has been happening. Like I've been hosting some Dune board game nights, which has been fun, with friends who don't even particularly care for the universe of Dune, and they still want to keep on coming, so that's nice. So yeah, I look forward to hosting many more salons, and it's Interintellect has like provided me with a way of connecting with people, regardless of like physical, geographical positioning around the planet. And that was really useful, because when I moved back home during COVID, I didn't really have that. So Interintellect was super useful there. Who hasn't gone? Have you gone, Eloy? Or
No, I haven't gone. So thank you, Nikki. My name is Eloy. I have been part of Interintellect for a couple of years. I have hosted once, but particular personal circumstances and my work issues basically have made me stay away for a while. But I plan to come back in hosting. I have a few ideas, and yes, I was drawn to Interintellect because of the generous space to think out loud and to meet interesting people. I just wanted to hear what were the best practices and the best ways to engage your audience and present a topic that is really worthwhile for everyone to enjoy and to discuss.
And the last person left is Alina. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and why you're here and what your questions are about being a host.
Sure, absolutely. Can you hear me? Cool. Yeah, so I'm Alina. I'm based in Mexico City, and I think what draws me to the community is, I guess, I haven't attended anything and I haven't hosted, but I just kind of want to generate a little more intellectually oriented, I guess, conversations here where I live, and I think some of my, I guess I haven't hosted anything for Interintellect, but I guess I've led a lot of workshops for work, and I guess I have hosted an enormous amount of dinner parties, which I guess is a little bit different, but I definitely would be interested in combining the idea of cooking and talking about topics that are interesting. I think my questions are really around framing or framing topics and questions that will be engaging and that also won't create a situation where someone goes really deep into like a technical rabbit hole, for example, but kind of creates a space that everyone can participate in. So I think that's everything for me.
All right, thanks for introducing yourselves, everyone. I'm really excited that you guys are all here and really interested in this. So without further ado, I'll move on to the next part of this training, which is actually to riff a little bit about the history of like why we call them salons. And full disclosure, this is something I'm like beginning to research more to put on our website. So it's a little vague today, but what I will say is that back in the day in France, specifically in early modern revolutionary France, salons were really integral to how France had cultural and intellectual development. A lot of historians talk about how when people were gathering in each other's living rooms, basically a cultural hub emerged. And it's kind of like how the public sphere started having people actively contributing like their ideas and being able to like, have like actual discourse that was essential to how people would, take those ideas back, write about them, talk about them, and how all these things spread. And so when we say we want to reinvent the French salon for the modern day, we also want to have a public sphere where people from all over the world are coming together to have discourse. And so a big thing I will emphasize about why a salon is different than like a regular event is it's very designed to be non-hierarchical. It's supposed to be a conversation that, yes, is casual, but the idea is that like casual can still be somewhat structured, but it doesn't have to be like hierarchically structured. For example, like the difference between a host and a facilitator is the host is playing like an active part in like kind of managing the energy of the room by also being very participatory and accessible. So instead of being like kind of like the person that like, like interviews like just the audience if you're a facilitator, or if you were like, say, a guest at an event and you were the only one talking the whole time, and then there was a Q&A and the audience was asking you questions. Salons are basically interactive. So at all times, the host and the other attendees in the room are all speaking. And the host is usually the person that came up with the topic, but because our community is very large and enthusiastic, and the baseline is that we're all very well-versed and diverse in our experiences and our expertise and in our own curiosities, this leads to like kind of like, a melting pot of different perspectives that can attend each salon. So the host, I think of them as like the initiator of the space. Like you aren't solely responsible for like, like, I don't know, if something goes wrong, I don't think it's like on the host to be like blamed, but I do think that the host is the one that comes up with the idea. But the people that join in are also responsible for creating that sense of conversational energy. So I think that's a really important point to emphasize, because I get this question a lot about what's the difference between like a regular event in a salon, or like what's the difference between a Twitter space / Clubhouse conversation and a salon. And I think that the people that come to salons, they're already there with an intention to engage and converse. This is sort of what we like position ourselves as to the general public. You won't necessarily get someone who is just there to just listen. I don't think that's the general buy-in. I mean, maybe once in a while people like stay off camera and don't speak the whole time. But I think one thing a host for an internet salon can like rely on is the idea that like whatever you're interested in, if someone shows up, they are like invested in having a good experience just as much as you and being responsible for that experience. So that's a big thing I want to emphasize. I think, like even if so usually with a lot of different topics, which we'll get into like how to choose a good topic, there is a responsibility for the host to have, you know, some reflections or insights prepared in advance. But like those insights and the reflections are there so they can like inspire conversation from the other people as well. So usually people, when they list an event that they're hosting, they have like, you know, pre-reading or they have a preview of the discussion questions. So when your attendees show up, they already have an idea of something they reflected on or like thought about. So it's not just going to be hopefully like you trying to drag it out of them. That would be very unusual. And yeah, so that's a lot of points I wanted to bring up first. I actually also wanted to talk about the 4 rules of hosting, which if Nikki, Gary, if you could drop the link to that from the Athenium, that'd be really helpful. Basically, actually, wait, you know, I'm gonna actually just share my screen because it's actually already here. One sec. Okay. Okay, so the 4 rules of hosting, we're gonna scroll down here. And yeah, so for continuity, yeah, one of the most difficult emotional experiences of the 21st century has been the ability to connect with other people without a guarantee that you'll talk to them again. I like to think of like salons also as like, it's like a greater conversation that continues. That's why we have like series, that's why we have Discord, and people tend to meet each other through like we've had group chats be created, people follow each other on Twitter. We've even had people like find love and like get married. So the sense of community that these salons are kind of like individual nodes for and connecting people is, I think, really important, because I think intellectual discourse at its core is just sort of like an avenue to achieve also like emotional connection. And so the difference between this and like a regular event is like this is a space overall that's like designed to like hold what came out of each conversation. So like, you know, people have started like projects in response or found like collaborative business partners or like really close friends as a result of going to these. And so each individual salon is like also designed to give people like a sense of like friendliness and like casualness. A big part of the French salon of the 18th century was they wanted to spread like civility and like, you know, like pleasantry. And they wanted to like have a space where people weren't just going to like bite each other's heads off. They wanted like the conversations to be like respectful, and for also people to like feel empowered to like show off their own intelligence and such. And the second part is, yes, interintellect hosts are happily imperfect. It's not just like you're the host and thus you're the star of the show, whether you like it or not. Like most attendees have maybe been hosts themselves, or they're there to also participate. And so I think a big part of actually like what I tell like new hosts is to just like have a lot of like self-compassion, that you're not expected to be like perfect. And this isn't like a corporate thing or like a school project you're being graded on. I think a lot of us, especially here in the West, have like trauma from like the days when like, oh, public speaking was just you standing up there, everyone just staring at you, and you being expected to perform. But when you're a host of an interintellect salon, you're not expected to perform. You're just expected to like, you know, be nerdy about the things you want to be nerdy about. And there's implicitly a sense of safety that the other people who are there are probably not going to judge you because they are on the same page. They are your allies, peers, and collaborators in creating a conversation. Like, you know, it's not just you doing all like the work. Like, yes, there is maybe some prep work of like you reading some things that you want to like chat about, but there's also some like, there's also just some work that the attendees will naturally do. So yes, I will reassure you that we are trying to be laid back and unpretentious and not have this be like something to give you like trauma from like when you were in school. And the third rule of hosting is ritual space. So I think that the point to emphasize here is your duty as a host is to just be very hospitable. And I would expand on this description by saying hospitality in like an online conversation looks like enthusiasm. So the best way to actually engage your attendees is to, I guess, like try to signal like thoughtfulness and like curiosity. So the example I'd give is like when I'm hosting and I put a question out there and people are like, one person responds and then it's like completely quiet, I'll try to like kind of like nod empathetically if I'm trying to like figure out my response to that, or like nod empathetically while I wait to give room to someone who might be more shy, who might have something to say. And then if no one says anything, then, I'll like, ask people if they wanted to respond before I respond. But I think my duty as the host is to just come with, like a reasonable amount of enthusiasm and friendliness, like either have an emotional response to what the person said, or have like another like follow-up question for them to like go deeper or to ask the room. So it's kind of like you're like keeping track of the energy and just being like, if no one else in the room seems to really care about what that person said, being like the person who cares. So I feel like a lot of our hosts have like big hearts as well as like large minds. So like this to me has never been a problem, but I think that's the powerful part of like hospitality. Like a lot of this is like very instinctual. If you're a decent like conversationalist, people feel listened to if they're being listened to. So I think that if you set your intention as a host to deeply listen to other people and be active in like responding, that's like, yeah, pretty important. And we'll also talk about like how to manage like if there's actually too much talking, which is also a problem in addition to like no one talking, and it's a bit more complicated. And then the fourth rule of anchoring to truth is basically like, I guess like how I would frame this is we all trust each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt in the space. We are very clear, like when we curate salons, that we don't have any super political ones with agendas already. So like every salon that we put out there has already been like looked at by the InterIntellect team to like make sure it's like respectful. And most people that join a salon, we also expect to be respectful. And if they aren't, we are, going to find you and we're going to very nicely, talk to you about that. But yeah, I think that there's, I guess a expectation of like bottom line trust and patience. Again, like people aren't probably going to like expect perfection, especially if you're a debut host and you don't like have like a name in the community quite yet. But I do think it is important that we anchor ourselves to the truth of who we are as people, is that a lot of the times just like wanting to do something and wanting to like be like the awesome, sweet person you are goes further in this space, because we are selecting for people that have that same intention as us, and we're throwing away people that are pretentious, are condescending, and we just say no to that. So I guess, yeah, it's a bit cheesy perhaps, but we really are trying to spread good vibes and like have the good internet. And I think this is like the bottom line is that like everyone is opted in if you're participating in like our platform. And I think that if you as a host can like hold this in your heart and hold that like we really trust you and believe in you, that's actually like pretty powerful in like how the space turns out. Like, not to be like super cheesy, but it really do be like that. Yeah, so I'm actually going to pause for now and kind of check the chat or vibe check and like see how everyone feels, if anyone wants to unmute and say anything before I continue talking. How's everyone doing? Okay, wait. Okay, yes, let's okay, we can like have it so yeah, you can raise your hand and then I'll just call on you if you want to say something. We'll go with is it Eloy or Aloy? How do you say your name?
You can say Elo or Lo, it's fine.
Oh no, lots of choice. Okay, yeah. Oh, wait, go ahead.
Thank you, Crystal. Just a question. What happens when you have a guest? What are the best ways to do the vibe management when you're like hosting a salon and you bring a guest in order to get the conversation flowing?
Are you saying like in the case of a super salon?
Yeah, you can actually bring someone like in the case of you're doing a salon and you basically have a co-host or that you can bring as a guest to talk about something that will be of interest to the membership. So how do you deal with the vibe management in those situations?
Yeah, well, I guess like in cases where there's like a three roles where there's the host, the guest, and the attendees, I break it up so like the presentation format of like my own insights is instead me asking the guest a bunch of questions, and then I have like questions I've prepared to like ask the audience to engage with like what the person said. So like I like split the time between like talking to that person live and then having like the audience or the attendees also like participate and like, you know, like asking them like what they think and then giving them space to also ask the guest. So it becomes kind of like I'm like the point in the triangle, like connecting the guest with the audience and such. Does that help?
A lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Okay, Anansi, your turn.
Yeah, I was just saying, I guess I was just commenting, not necessarily a question. I was definitely picking up the vibe of what hosting is from you just now. I was just like, that was really helpful to make things click in place of like, what's the goal? Like, what are we intending to do when we host something? That felt good to hear. Just want to say that.
Yay, I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, we really want all of our hosts to know that like we are trying to make this place like the safest and like most wholesome place on the internet, which is kind of funny because we also talk about like raunchy topics like psychedelics and like sex or something, right? But it's the manner in which we're talking about them that we want to like emphasize and spread, like that sort of like respectability. So yeah, I'm really glad that you feel that. Like the difference between this and like facilitation is that you get to be like a part of like what's happening. And I think that's really great because instead of being the narrator or like the dude who's like watching, you're like part of what you created. And I think that's really empowering as a host. And you know, you get to make some money. Like you take 70% of the ticket sales and we can like help with like pricing all of that. But if I'm being honest, a lot of people like they're doing it for like the experience because it's like, would you rather have like two people give you like $400 or would you rather have like a whole bunch of people but only make like $100? Most people actually say the second one. But you know, we have people that make a pretty buck along the way after they do it a lot. So I've said before that we're a bit like, it's kind of like when you like start a Substack and you just grow your audience over time. It's like with hosting, you also like get more people to come to your events over time as more people get to know you and like you create buzz in the community and you also just get better at it, like better at bringing the vibes, so to speak. So yeah, that's like also what I want to. Does anyone else have any questions before I talk a little bit more about the topics and such?
I have a question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
How do you guys navigate, or I guess it sounds like setting the tone does a lot for how the conversations go. So I guess my question is like, do you find yourselves having to, like play moderator, or kind of like diffuse maybe some like frustration or higher energy between participants? And if so, how do you really handle that on like a Zoom?
Yeah, so I have to say, like, we really hope that doesn't happen, like we try to be preventative of that. But that being said, yes, that does tend to happen. And this is where I think like setting the intention for the space early on to like give people like a preview of the expectations is also like, I think, bottom line important. And we're going to start having that in our email, letting people know what the Zoom link is. Like, I think letting people know, like, hey, like, we expect the space to be like respectful. And if, there starts to be tension here, like I as the host have like the right to like mute people and like gently try to be like, hey, like, let's take a breather real quick, guys. I sense I sense some tension, and like, let's like, like, let's come back on topic or something. Like, I don't see that happening very often, but I have heard of people having to do that a couple times. And this is back to like the principle of the imperfect host. I see like that principle of hosting as you have to really trust yourself, and you have to really trust that, like, yeah, you are a friendly, respectful, like, vibes manager. And also that is like a privilege. Like, you have the right to be putting your foot down a bit if things are getting rowdy. Like, you can like unmute first and say something like, hey guys, like, I just want to like, like, stop this right here. If like people are arguing, be like, I want to stop this right here and let you guys know I feel like this conversation might want to like go back to like a different like topic or a different like part of it. Can we like take a breather, right? And like, don't worry too much about like making the wrong call of like, oh, maybe they were just having fun arguing and I misread it. Instead of like, I think, doubting it, I think it's better to just go with your instincts, like the whole like ask for forgiveness, not permission thing. Because if it was not that big of a deal, ideally the people would be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize we were getting out of hand. Like, yeah. And so even if you were like wrong, I think, again, going back to how like people have opted in to have a respectful experience, like they will probably take it well that like you as the host are like the point person for like if things start to give you like a bad feeling. But if they like get rowdier, then at that point it's like, whether I misread it or not, that's like not okay. And so I think here it's like just really root in like, yes, like, you are an active participant and it's non-hierarchical, but I think if the vibe shifts, then like it's your job to like do your best to corral it. And again, like, every experience is a learning experience. So if like it doesn't go like the way you want it to and you're really upset, like there's like a whole team of people like me and like I like Yuri and Nikki, we're here for you to like help, troubleshoot, postmortem, talk about it too. But yeah, that's like kind of a dire case, and that doesn't happen too often. But it does. I would say even if people are talking too much, I think perhaps private DMing them in the chat, or like unmuting real quick and then putting them on mute if you have to, if they're absolutely like dominating the conversation. I think that's also something that you have the right to do. And again, this is like,
Okay.
Yeah. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's not, I am not the king of the living room, but it's still my living room. Like, we've invited everybody over here to have a good time, but like, I'm hosting. And part of that is as many people as possible having a good time. Ideally everybody, but if like one person has to like, have slightly less good time for everyone else to continue to have a good time.
Yeah. And again,
That's what it is.
Yeah, and technologically, like Cassie just said in the chat, a lot of these salons are more philosophical and abstract. And people don't generally end up having like political arguments or some sort of like weird thing where they're arguing over like some, I don't know, like whatever personal like tip. So like it is highly unlikely, but I guess I'm just like letting you know what your rights are as a host, because back in the day when these were happening in people's literal living rooms, it's kind of like, I invited you into my home and I'm not going to be a tyrant, but like, yeah, like if push comes to shove, yeah, you are like the host of the Zoom room, so to speak. So that's just something for everyone to know, I think. setting intentions early on for your space is a great way to like, you know, be able to like take action if worst comes to worst, right? And I do like thinking in worst case scenarios, even though I'm also like a very positive person. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think this is an anxiety that people have from experience. It's not that commonly a reality, but you know, having like a bit of an idea of what you could do if it did happen that way is also always what makes people feel safe. But yeah, so if anyone else has any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll like go over them at the end. I actually wanted to take this opportunity to talk about like how to pick a good topic, because yeah, ideally, like if you pick a certain type of topic, like it's not going to be like, oh, like, I don't know, fascism or like some kind of like political like thing. Like if you pick certain topics, they're not going to probably kick up those sorts of tensions. And we also try our best to not let trolls in. Like we have our marketing set up so we don't have like people coming in just to give like innocent participants trouble. So we do really care about quality control. And yeah, so let's go back to how do I make any idea into a great salon topic? So I've thought about this a lot, and I think a lot of really good salons will kind of ask sort of like the title of the salon will kind of be like the thesis of the salon. And basically it is something like topic, why it matters, and how we're all going to like personally investigate and reflect on that if you come to this salon. So like examples are like, oh, like beauty rituals, how have they changed over time? How do they affect us today? Or like introversion and extroversion, how can we coexist happily? Or what does it mean to be a mother today? And how has the idea of motherhood changed over time? So like in all these cases, like you want to make a topic where like there's like a sort of personal like kind of tie to like people's everyday lives, because you know, like people probably do wonder like what does it mean to be a mother, because you know, even people that aren't mothers think about it, even like because motherhood, children, all that stuff affects us. Introverts and extroverts, they both probably think about that idea once in a while and how to like coexist happily. And even stuff like, let's read like the last 3 things that Alexander the Great wrote or something, and think about and talk about like what are the modern implications. A lot of stuff is like topic or concept and how people can like use about it today, or why should people care about it today. So people usually come to a salon to learn about something and contribute what they're learning or what they're curious about, right? So that's why like I tried to make this a bit like salon like but I think a good topic, like anything can become like a philosophical or intellectual conversation if it's just framed in like that way, in the way of why does it matter and what do you think? And I think that in this way, a lot of good topics that we can help shape do come down to like respectful discourse, because people are like personally reflecting and such. And every good salon, in my opinion, has an amount of like personal insight and an amount of like analysis. So people are kind of just asking questions, answering to those questions, asking new questions, then the other person who you just answered a question of might have an answer for you. And yeah, I think it's people just collaborating. It's like a group project, but the project is for you guys to talk. And the end result is you guys both have a new understanding that you didn't have before you got there. But yeah, does that shed any insight as to how any topic almost is like fair game? Because it comes down to like almost like a formula of like how you can apply it to people today. And if chances are, if you can apply it to yourself, there's going to be someone else out there, probably even our community, that can relate. Like even talking about like, I don't know, like we've had some salons about like the implications of like AI, but then there's like other ones are like, oh, we all saw like for example, there's like a salon I'm doing soon that's like around the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's about like, what are the yous and other timelines doing and how does that make you feel? And we've had some people who find that very interesting because after a lot of people saw that movie, that was like a question that maybe they had in the back of their mind, or after we mentioned it, they're like, oh yeah, I saw that movie and I guess thinking of myself in timelines is interesting. So, you know, you would come away with like perhaps a nuanced understanding of timelines because maybe we'll have like a scientist there or like someone really spiritual who has jumped timelines, I don't know, or someone who saw a similar movie. So there's a lot of opportunity to play with each topic based on like who ends up showing up. And so that's why I think it's really special. And this is also where I think like more is not always better. I don't actually think that having a ton of people at your salon is always the best, because depending on how intimate the topic is or how complex it is, sometimes like conversations with more than like 7 or 8 people can get like, oh, that's like pretty intimidating. Like our James Clear salon was really great, but there were like 60 people there, and a lot of people like never really got to talk other than the chat. So we actually really emphasize like the intimacy of a salon really has to vary based on like the topic and what kind of experience you want, right? So that's something that also really matters. And with that, like if anyone wants to respond to that or ask more questions, I would love to, you know, hear your responses to that. Yes, Raul.
The only thing I wanted to say was, I kind of feel like when you're saying that, I feel like I almost need to give myself permission when it comes to say speaking about a certain topic, because I feel like when somebody else say brings up a topic, so be it in a salon or say in any context, you know, I'm like, hey, yeah, cool, you know, Crystal's talking about X, yeah, you know, let's talk about X. But you know, when I feel like I need to come up with it, I judge myself very harshly, and I'm like, oh, hey, will everybody love this, you know? And otherwise don't talk about it. And to me, I think that's the trepidation I go through with, say, hosting a, you know, like say coming, well, you and I were slacking each other about, hey, you know what, dude, you know, come up with a topic for a salon, just message me and we will brainstorm and figure something out for you. And yeah, I this is something, but you know, I think just hearing you talk, I feel it's instead of say obsessing over is the topic great, instead focus on conducting the situation well, and you know, just having some level of ownership and just conducting it well. And you know, people are going to show up, and if people are showing up, it means they want to talk about it. That's it. And that's ownership right there. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I will go so far to say that I don't think every space out there that's like kind of a public speaking engagement has the same feeling. So like, not to validate your trepidation, but I certainly can understand where you're coming from, like why you would have that sort of anxiety, because you know, like in the corporate world or in school, where when we had to like talk and we were like being assessed, like of course we would have this sort of like you know, anxiety around that. And we already like live lives where we don't get like clear access or reads or like, you know, or little windows into people's inner worlds unless we're bold enough to like ask or create that space 24/7. So I think like in a sense, InterIntellect is like a place where, yes, we talk about intellectual ideas, but like, yeah, the opt-in is that people come here willing to be like, you know, vulnerable to a like reasonable degree, but also to validate like what other people are going through, because we're all here to like make the internet feel like more human, and through intellectual topics, see our humanness and how it's like, oh, I'm not the only one thinking about this. So yeah, like it's absolutely great that your takeaway was that it's about curating the experience, because it is that. Yeah, Anansi?
Yeah, something just came to mind. Just like, who are some examples of really next level hosts? Like, if I wanted to, after this call, like, you know, watch a YouTube video or something, just see like some next level hosting. Does anyone come to mind that you would point me to? Besides you, of course.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so not a lot are present on YouTube. I can certainly send out an email to those who are here today with like some examples from our YouTube, because off the top of my head, I believe a lot are super salons, but like I think you met Katrina De La Cruz in LA, right? So Katrina is actually a really great host. She hosts the Friend Finding Salon, and yeah, she has a really great energy to her. And then there's like, so like Visa actually used to also host quite a lot with us. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but Visa was really great at drumming up like conversation and then like ping ponging it to like other people. I think Anna is also pretty good at like being very responsive to like other people. Like I think actually if you look at like some of the host training videos, I actually feel like you can see a lot of like great veteran hosts there talking about hosting. But a lot of our like regular salons, so we have super salons which are with like special guests like Steven Pinker, like Emily Oster, like Agnes Callard even. Those are not maybe the best examples of like the average salon. So I think there are a few on YouTube, but I have to take a look, but I can certainly send them to you. I think the best way to kind of learn is to actually go to like salons that we're having right now. And, like Yuri, me and Nikki can send like free codes to any people that are interested because it's basically your training. So feel totally free to like ask for that as well. But yeah, I'll like send out an email for sure if someone can remind me. Did anyone else have any comments or questions?
Do you have are there any, what should I say, different tips for like a starter topic for like the first salon, like maybe be more conservative or less conservative, etc., etc. You know what I mean? What are there like separate rules for that? I mean, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, so we've been playing with this roster because we do notice a difference between debut hosts and active hosts in like how popular their topics are. I can't say though that any topic that's related to like self-help or technology or relationships, like self-help, mental health, like all those are usually topics where like I don't know if you read some interesting book and you want to like talk about it, like a book club salon would actually be like interesting for a debut host because you would just be discussing like a book together. Or you can talk about like, yeah, like kind of like a core existential question that's framed around like technological developments, relationships, or self-help, because everyone has an opinion on those these days. So for lack of a better way to put it, I feel like engagement bait, as they say on Twitter, is like rife for like getting a lot of attendees. But I would also say like to debut hosts, if it's like something that you've already had conversations with people about, like if you pick the topic based off of like, wow, it feels like all my friends just want to talk about XYZ, that and I want to talk about it with some new people that aren't just my friends, but I think that's like chances are it's a good topic. And that could be something like Elon Musk tweeted about marine biology and suddenly everyone wants to like think about this, and I happen to be a marine biologist or something like stuff like that. I think is good. I think for a debut host, whatever is your comfort zone with speaking to someone else about is good. So it's like really catered to like your subjective comfort zone. Like, I don't know, if I were to like host about like the history of like ancient Japan, I could like maybe pull it off, but it'd be really hard. But if I were to host about like, I don't know, like the esoteric origin of like one specific anime show that I really like, that I've heard two people talk about on Twitter, then like I'll go for that one because I think,
one?
Huh? The esoteric.
Which one?
Oh, I don't actually have an example. That was just like me making something up. I'm sorry. Neon Genesis Evangelion. I don't know. But yeah, does that help, Rahul?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to get your insight and see what you had in mind, but that helps.
Yeah.
I think even though some of it might sound more, what should I say? I don't want to say obvious, but even though I think after you say it, I think it just helps like put it to words, instead of just being like a amorphous cloud of thoughts in my head, so it helps to like hear you articulate it. So it's helping. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, did anyone who hasn't spoken in a while have anything they wanted to say or any questions so far?
I had a question on a slightly different topic. But it was just, I remember you had mentioned that some hosts will develop something of an audience around the topic they talk about, or maybe go on to essentially market a book. And I was just wondering, like, what you've seen in terms of just good strategies for, I suppose, like, I don't know, I've seen people like weave in blog posts that they've written into their listing, or just like strategies for relating the topics to something you care about or are working on separately.
Yeah, so we have like quite a few hosts that have a Substack. We have hosts that have a very large Substack as well. But like a lot of like the work they do on Substack, like an essay topic, right? It could, if like the comments section starts like sounding off on one of their like writings, then chances are they'll like possibly want to host on that, right? Like I had like it's actually funny because like I did the other way around, where I had a salon first and I wrote a Substack post about the salon, and it was about main character energy. It's basically about the concept of like being a main character and how to not frame that as narcissism, and what does that mean for our society today. It was called An Investigation to Main Character Energy. And like, yeah, after the salon, a few people tweeted about it, and I got like a lot of responses on Twitter. So I wrote like a Substack post that was kind of summing up what I had talked about in the salon and then had thought about before. And then the response to that Substack post like was like people wanted like a follow-up to this, to like the first salon, because they just didn't get to like actually participate in the first one. And they like had all these like side ideas about like side characters, or like having like villain energy or narrator energy or non-player character NPC energy. And I guess like it was interesting because like I didn't expect it to like take off that much, but the way I see like how creators can like, I guess, leverage using II like salons as a way to like grow their audience is that most of your work, if you're a thought leader or writer of some sort, probably is like thematic, like, like this, like, I don't know, like one of our hosts slash guests, Kyla Scallon, writes about the economy and uses like interesting extended metaphors to talk about economics. And like salons that she's hosted or participated in have been around like kind of like how to write about economics in such a way that it's not boring, and her insights about like why we need to have more of this, because she basically blew up on TikTok. And even hearing about her perspective on why she had like so many economic like interesting like metaphors where she compared the economy to an egg once. Like I think there's like a way to where if you're starting conversations constantly with your content in some way, which is certainly what Kyla did, then like a salon is a great way to like have an actual container for people to like show up and like want to speak about it. So even if you don't have a huge audience for it, I think if you look at like what of your work starts a conversation, and you have a series of salons that are conversations basically about like stuff you've been thinking about, and the essay insights are the pre-reading and the pre-reflection that you have for people, I think that's the best way to sort of have your brand as like a writer and creator go very nicely with like the salon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. It's just like the framing of it is back in the day, people didn't have comments section. They had to wait like, decades before they would hear from their readers in like the 1600s, right? But now we have comment sections where everyone can just say some stuff like, wow, I really like this idea. Have you considered reading blah, blah, blah? Oh, I didn't know that was something I could try. Thanks, man. Like so many conversations happen like through the comments or through like Twitter and Discord that like, why not centralize them into like a salon where other people can also come and talk about this idea? Yeah, Nikki, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, because I thought about something else when it comes to like leveraging the AI community for your own projects. Like I've seen a bunch of people who are also hosts and like writing a book, for example, where they would do like a series of salons and have like a salon per chapter, and sort of like work through it with the audience. And that's really interesting too. Sort of like going through your work in progress with people, and you both like giving as a host, but you're also like receiving feedback too on your own work. And then the conversations can continue in the Discord forum and on Twitter and wherever you in real life if you're close to the people. So that's another way I've seen some hosts leverage the community.
Yeah, definitely. Like, this is like the wholesome, nice space, but at the same time, like, if you have work, don't be shy about like showing it off, because chances are, if you're in this community, you have something thought-provoking to add. And yeah, like having salons or just sharing your work in the Discord, this is all like very encouraged by us, because a lot of people, when they get inspired, they like to write about it, talk about it, and then they go to a salon, get more inspired, write and talk about it. Like, we've had a lot of famous creators be able to like write more because they had such an engaging, interesting time like talking to the internet community. And that can certainly happen even if you're not like a big name. In fact, it's kind of how people can get bigger in a sense too. But yeah, oh yes, great examples in the chat too. Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, I'm going to continue here. Okay, so yes, and going back to how you can make sure the conversation is great no matter how many people are there. I really do think that you don't have to have like a ton of people like in the room to have like a great like conversation, because often conversations are between like two individuals, right? So I think, and this is where like we have to like, address the elephant in the room of like, it can be a little demotivating at times when like only two people show up to your salon. It's just like a three-way conversation. And so what I suggest to hosts is to adjust your expectations, so you're not like, oh, like expecting like a huge amount of people for it to be worth your time. Maybe set your intentions around like, what do I want to learn from the other people here? And what do I want other people to maybe learn that like I am reading about? Because I think there's a way for sometimes smaller conversations to even be like more intimate, and for like you to form more of a personal connection to like those in the room. In fact, sometimes like shy people get stage fright from like, like if there's like 14 people there, you might be a little less inclined to like unmute. But if there's like 2 people there, you might like get to know someone that like you wouldn't get to know in any other context. I've had salons with like less people where like there was previously a person that came to other salons I'd been to, and I never got to know them for real until that specific salon where it was just basically like a three-way conversation. So I think like another thing I have hosts, set their intentions with is that like, what is your goal with hosting? Because if it's like to connect with people or learn something new about this topic that you care a lot about, so it's about like intrinsic benefit, then it will feel rewarding, like no matter what. That's just like the personal side of it. Because when we are like, oh, like I want a lot of people, so when I perform, it'll feel worth it. We don't really like condone this attitude. Not that it's like bad, but I just don't think it's a good fit for the experiences we're trying to curate, because we're trying to have like, just non-hierarchical conversations, and you don't have to have like a minimum number for that to be the case. So that's something I want to emphasize too, that like your salon isn't a flop just because only like 3 people showed up. Like for me, and Anansi pointed this out too in the chat just now, I think of it as like I host salons as like a bat signal, like the Batman signal, for me to find the people that I'm meant to like collaborate with and that I'm meant to connect with. And this is a super important part, I think, to realize about hosting with Interintellect is, like you can get something out of the experience and you can like make it what it is. Like you have a lot of creative freedom in that. And yeah, like even if the salon feels kind of awkward and you feel bad about it after, this is still a generative space with the first rule, which is continuity. So you can come and talk to me or Yuri or Nikki about it, and we can like help you strategize a better way to like, attract more people to your salon in the future as well, or to figure out how you want to like take care of like, maybe the room was like really rowdy, maybe there were actually too many people there. How do you want to like curate the space for next time? So yeah, these are also really important points. Yeah, Nikki, you have your hand raised again.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to share a couple like thoughts from like an attendee's perspective on so like I've joined a lot of salons over the past year, and they've ranged from like 3 people, like 3 of us total, to 50 on the super salon end. And there's like the smaller groups can be really interesting as well. Like it's not just because of a low number, like having that smaller, more intimate group allows the conversation to, well, first of all, it gives people more time to speak. So that's always good. And like personally, I am one of those shy people who, like in a room with 15 people, I tend to hold back a bit. And that's one thing actually I really appreciated from Anna's end. Like whenever she would be in a salon and I'm also there, and I wouldn't really be participating much, and she would like, and there was a little moment where she could just, hey Nikki, you have any thoughts? So like pull me into the conversation, and that's really nice. And Crystal mentioned so doing that as a host as well, and that really works well. But yeah, there's like every salon I've joined, whether we're 3 people or 15, have all been really, really fun and useful and insightful. Even if I felt like a fish out of the water with like a completely different domain where I didn't feel like I had much to add, there's usually something to add.
Yeah, and before I go to Rahul, I just wanted to add, which I think I might address in the future host training, about how introverts and extroverts host very differently. But I just want to bring it up now that like, even if you're like a more introverted person, or like maybe an extrovert, but like have a lot of anxiety so you can clam up, I would encourage you to realize that just as how we've been talking about vibes being managed, you yourself have a certain vibe as well. There are like also very like less talkative, or there are like less talkative hosts. I can't name one right now. Oh, actually, I think my friend Elaine Wang is also like a host who I think is good, but she's like a bit more introverted than like me or Anna or Visa. But I feel like if you like command a sense of curiosity and like warmth, like you smile and you nod when other people talk, I think you can still be a very like powerful host, right? You just have to be, like I said earlier, responsive to people. So like, even if like you aren't someone who's like going on and on, or like has like a super like golden retriever energy, you can still be someone who's just very like present and like seems like approachable and seems like, genuinely warm. And you can like command that even if you don't talk a lot or have that. Like that's one thing I want to encourage. Like even if you're typically like little more introverted and shy, you can like maybe root in a sense of like having some authority as someone who is the initiator of the space. Like you invited people by having it available and they came, right? And I wouldn't even say like you don't have to be like cheesing smiling. You just be like, yeah, like soft smiling even. I think a lot of it goes down into like the second rule of being an imperfect host, of being really okay with like how you're going to do it, and how there's like people here on the team and in the community who are willing to help and support you as you get better on your host journey too. Rahul, you want to say something?
Oh, I wanted to ask you a question. I don't know if you addressed this already, but what do you think about when it comes to like in-person hosting? And would you say that it is, I would imagine that, I don't know, in some ways, I imagine that it is actually easier to conduct, because there is more visual feedback, but then will people even show up? Like, how does that whole thing work?
Yeah, so a lot of the salons I'm talking about are like online salons, but then
Sure.
if it's an IRL, it is a bit of a different vibe. I agree. And I've hosted like explore IRL. So I haven't hosted as many IRLs as I have online salons. I would say though that depending on how you're seated, if you're not seated in a circle at the IRL salon, it can actually be a little hard to keep track of like everyone's body language or like attention levels.
Yeah.
So I actually think sometimes, I don't know about other people, but for me, I can get a little overwhelmed and not quite knowing like where people are at in an IRL space. So I think it really depends, right? But I do think that people feel more connected to each other because they're more physically like in the same space. So I think there is a bit of a difference of people's energy levels and enthusiasm is just more like dialed up because they're all together in this space. So I think also like Zoom fatigue, I think people prefer the IRLs. We just, I think like New York, Lisbon, London are the main places where there are large II communities. I think the Bay Area is also decent, but it's really scattered because the Bay Area is really big. So I would say like, if you want to have an IRL in a city that's not one of those strongholds, it is a little difficult to get people to all come together because our community is global. It's still kind of scattered. But if you give it enough time and you promote in advance, we can get a decent amount of people for like certain cities like DC and like LA and like, you know, other places too. So it just depends. Like we'll help you with like finding the people in the community or like inviting other people from outside to come as well if you do want to ever host an IRL. But yeah, I think like the promotional flow is a little different there, and the in-person vibe is a little different too because of people's energy levels and just orienting it so everyone can see everyone. But otherwise, I would say hosting an IRL is still a really great experience, and you can be a debut host with an IRL salon too.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel like hosting IRL, to me, just personally, if I just think about, you know, managing the crowd, it sounds easier for me, like just personally, but I would imagine that lesser people are going to be showing up. It also reduces like, you know, having like international audience and, you know, maybe people across time zones collaborating as happens once in a while on Intellect. And second, yeah, I mean, finding a location is a real thing. Like you and I, we were looking for locations when you were here in the Bay. So it's I do think, yeah, I mean, I will actually add that to, you know, say feedback for anybody else think about real life things. It's like you don't need to have a location where people actually want to sit down and talk, and there's not going to be a bunch of noise. So like if you're in the middle of a coffee shop, which we were in a decent coffee shop, but you know, it also took us a minute to actually find, and so stuff like that. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, totally. And I also want to address something that Cassie said in the chat, which is actually about like having some valuable facilitation experience. Like I said, you can set the intentions like early on that you have like the authority to like mute people if they're getting really rowdy. But I think sometimes like you know, the more gray areas are if there are like really dominant voices, and inviting people that like haven't spoken as much. Yeah, like a trick is to like private like DM people so you're not like calling them out in case they are like really uncomfortable with it, because I think like being able to multitask as a host and like pay attention to those people without making them feel singled out because maybe they're just really shy, I think is really good. And also like, yeah, I'm encouraging attendees that like, oh, if you're feeling shy and want some like words of encouragement, feel free to like pop in the chat, or if you don't want to like speak as much, you can still participate through being in the chat. So these are all like really good tips as well I forgot to bring up. So thanks for reminding me, Cassie. But yes. So yeah, I think it comes down to, yeah, having also like a sense of like self-trust, which I'll continue saying because like having like self-compassion can just like help you with like, you know, not overthinking what you're saying too, because that's something that people also worry about. Like, what if I say something that looks dumb, or oh no, like I'm drawing a blank because I suddenly like lost my ability to speak because I'm so nervous. I think like just, you know, if you need some motivation or encouragement, feel free to like talk to the team or push your salon back. Like, you know, there's no shame in this, like even if it's designed to be more casual than a typical like public speaking experience, it can still feel nerve-wracking because of your association with those things, or it can still feel like draining. So we encourage you to like reach out to us, and we can like definitely talk to you guys one-on-one about things as well. And yeah, like you have a lot of like authority because you are like someone that even like wants to host. Like I think a lot of people have the capability of being very smart and insightful and reflective, and these experiences are designed so everyone can like have a chance to like contribute their opinion, their curiosity, and their view. We really want to empower that, including to our hosts as well. And so, you know, you can empower yourself, and that's how you can end up empowering other people, whether in a loud way or quiet way, doesn't really matter. So yeah, does anyone have resources on reading, learning, on hosting facilitation? So we actually really want to start having more resources that, you know, don't just belong to us, also are from like other people. So that is something that we want to like implement so people feel more prepared as well. So thank you for pointing that out. But yeah, that's actually about all the points I wanted to bring up. I'm going to take a look at anything from the opening that I didn't get to.
Hey, Crystal, were you have you been a host before? I like, is this something you've been doing for a long time? I'm just curious as to like how, you know, your own, because you're very fluid at this, and you know how you fell into it.
So I actually haven't really hosted before. Like, I really haven't, so I'm like really new. I mean, a lot of this is just intuition, I guess, so.
No, it's good. No, you're fluid with it. That's what I was just trying to figure out if, you know, I was just, it's not like I wanted to be curious about you. It's more that, you know, you're a data point now, you know, because I've been to a few of your salons, you know, so I can see how, you know, how much of it is you versus say how much of it has been honed by say prior, you know, like hosting experience. So I was just trying to get a sense of that because I think that's interesting. Like it was like, for example, you know, one of the things that was striking me when I was hosting this event earlier this week was this thing that Richard Feynman used to do. Richard Feynman, he's a physicist. He like won a Nobel Prize for physics and everything. But he used to take acting classes to become a better teacher. You know, and that was a thought that I kind of thought about after I was done with hosting that event. And I was like, you know, that sounds awesome, actually, you know, to me. So that's why I was then like, I was wondering, you know, what are more online resources, or maybe somebody's got a stack of YouTube videos or playlist which I could check out on hosting. So anyway.
Yeah, so Nikki did drop something in the chat if you want to take a look.
Yeah.
We are going to start to centralize more like hosting on hosting, basically, because we do want to help people with, yeah, like feeling more comfortable with that. But yeah, no, I only started laughing nervously because I was like, oh no, am I going to be like called out for like not having authority? But yeah, a lot of it has just been, I think, through intuition, because I think the only prior, I don't have hosting experience, but I think I have experience with like running workshops and being a life coach. So like, I guess my experience is through like doing tarot reading, like workshops for like big mastermind groups or something, where I was just like helping people with like, I don't know, personal anxiety and stuff. So that's like the closest experience I've had, but it's not necessarily with hosting specifically. It just so happens that Interintellect hosting kind of like, I don't know, I guess I have a personality that like resonates with doing it more than like a presentation where like I get no feedback from anyone and I don't have permission to like ask. And I hate that. I'm really bad at that. So I think it was like from knowing what I don't like that I was able to locate what I can do here that like works and feels really good to me as well. So yeah.
Yeah, no, the way you do it definitely resonates with me, right? Like I feel like when I you know, went for the first salon with you, I'm like, you know, I see the similarities out here, you know what I mean? But except that I think I have got more, I think the self-trust, I think I've got a lot more self-trust issues. So
yeah,
that's work on, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm actually going to look at, so we wrote down some of the questions from the very beginning, and I think we went over most of them. Yeah, so there's one that's about like how to avoid creating a situation where we go down a technical rabbit hole and it just becomes like really one-sided. And yeah, I guess like to re-emphasize, I think, yeah, just like trusting yourself where like I think like gently saying something along the lines of like, hey, like I think this is like a really interesting like tangent that I'd love to come back to, but I actually want to like bring us back to X point. I think that can really help. Like anytime you can catch a break of someone having a monologue, just gently reorienting towards where you want the conversation to go is good. And if you have lost track of where you want it to go, maybe like write it down real quick while the person is going down like their rabbit holes like someone else. Because yeah, you're allowed to very gently and kindly, but firmly bring it back on topic. And it happened in situations where it's been a little harder. But I think at that point, perhaps like trying to send the person a DM, like on Zoom can be really helpful as well. And it's like trial and error. You can like gently pull them aside after. Like I think having boundaries is very healthy. And I think you can say it in a way that isn't mean because you can like see where they're coming from. They're probably really excited and perhaps even nervous and getting carried away. So like find a way to like gently shift attention back to that. You have the authority as a host and, talk to them after. So that's one thing. And best practices, asking about slides and how to draw insights from others who aren't inclined to speak. So I do think slides can be helpful if they're minimal. They can be a little distracting at times if there's too much information on them. So like if you have a lot of really dense insights to share, having like slides with like a few bullet points might be good. Having the discussion questions on the actual slide would be good too. I made the mistake of not preparing a little slideshow today, but I think I might do it next time because I miss my slideshows. But yeah, like I think as long as they aren't overwhelming for either you or the person to read, and you're very mindful of this, that slides can help you stay focused if you have anxiety about like forgetting your points. So I don't have slides today, but I will just share that before this training / salon almost, I decided to create a Google Doc where I went to the event listing and I took the discussion questions we were going to have. I copied and pasted them onto the document, and I had spaces between each question where I wrote down certain key points I wanted to make sure we got to. And I also copied and pasted like some info about the history of salons and the 4 rules of gathering. And I just made myself a little like presentation thing. So it's like I'm kind of like talking while also looking at the points because I'm not reading anything, but I'm like remembering, cueing myself. So even if you guys aren't looking at the slides themselves, because I don't have time to like actually turn them into slides, I'm still looking at stuff to like keep myself on focus. So that's part of it too. I'm not just like completely going off the cuff. And in IRL, I'd probably also like have my phone and kind of glance at it to like make sure I remember my point, but I'd still be making sure to make eye contact. So that's also something for stuff that's information heavy. And other conversations like that might be more open-ended. I don't think it's as important, but I do think that for the purpose of like keeping yourself grounded, it can be really good to have slides. All right. And yeah, the last thing I'll say before we close out here is withdrawing insights from people that aren't inclined to speak. I think making sure when you prepare that you have like an open-ended question that you can just kind of like have there is like a really good practice. Like, and then if no one talks for a while, you can like maybe go back to like something someone else said earlier and ask them to like go deeper and then see if like the other people want to like join in. But I think that for the most part, in most cases, like it's only going to be a couple people that might not be as inclined to speak, but most like there will be some people that are like active and curious because that is the space we create. So I will be reassuring of that. And yeah, like what Cassie said, intros can be helpful in warming people up. Like if you say your intention for being there, I find that people end up getting unblocked early on and they could say how they're feeling. Yeah. But with that, I think those are all the points I wanted to go over today about the basics of what a salon is and what hosting basically is. So if anyone feels compelled to share maybe some of their takeaways, I would love to hear, because I want to make sure we, address any comments or questions for the next host training that will be in 2 weeks as well. So yeah.
Just a brief question. Is there something like a run of show that sounds way too formal, but just like something like a template for these for actually hosting? So I'm thinking of, for example, when you said set intentions early on, or ask for intros and warm people up, so things like that.
So actually, a lot of the stuff that you heard today it's the first time I've said it, and it's not actually really on our website. This is like what we tend to tell people and is in our host trainings. But now that you bring it up, a lot of like what I've talked about today will be captured and put on the site, so people have that as a resource going forward. That is the intention. And yeah, thanks for asking, because that's just, another prompt for us to get it up faster. So yeah. And I will make sure to personally send it to you, because I know you're like interested in hosting after it's done. So yeah. Actually, yeah, everyone, sorry, Anansi, you can go, and everyone can just unmute. No more calling on, it's fine.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I guess, share my takeaway. I'm just like, this is me just crystallizing like what hosting is for me right now, based on what I've been absorbing this whole time. So like hosting is like creating a container and managing the vibe of that container so that everyone within can come to like a mutual understanding about the topic and kind of synchronize with each other and hopefully leave the whole thing feeling a little more connected to what matters to them and what matters to others. And I lost the thread there. That's what I got.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Do you feel more confident about hosting now?
Yeah, I do. I can do that.
God, yay.
I don't know that.
Okay, yes, there we go. I can't work Zoom. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think I really appreciate this. I think it was a good kind of overview of the idea. And I think that, at least the way that I see it, that this is the fact that InterIntellect hosts these sort of hosting training salons is part of what makes the platform great. Like it's part of, having the platform in the first place, the way that it's branded, the way that you guys go about your marketing and inviting people, and the tone that you set. This is just an extension of that, where it's like, okay, continuing the tone setting kind of from every angle. It's just like, if people want to host them, let's talk to those people. It's just like, hey, this is not a thing where we're not cultivating the vibe of you coming in and setting up a let's fight. Like, no, nobody start that over here. And if that's what you want to do, you're gonna have to find another platform to do it on. That's not what we're into. And so I think that it's really cool, and I really enjoyed meeting you guys, hearing you guys kind of, talk about your different perspectives on vibe management and what it entails. That is awesome.
Yeah, I will fight you if you try to fight anyone on this platform. Nicely. Yeah, Cassie?
Just appreciative. Like I'm always learning more about hosting, and maybe this year I will host something, given how many times I've attended salons and not hosted anything.
Yeah, I was like, Cassie is always attending, but I feel like she's got to have thought about hosting already. I'm just gonna wait. But yeah, I hope you feel more comfortable, like with the idea and like what it entails, I guess, after. Cool. Yeah. Nikki, Yuri?
Sorry, yeah. This was really helpful actually. Like I've been wanting to host, like I've joined so many interesting conversations and just met so many awesome people, and I haven't hosted anything yet, but like now I have many opportunities to, and there's like also like this external pull, like now I'm a community manager, you know, so there's some really helpful information here, and I do feel more confident about hosting, and it gave me a little bit of a boost for my IRL next weekend. So yeah, thanks. And a lot of like really useful feedback from everyone who joined as well. And some like really interesting and useful just observations and thoughts. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, this was definitely helpful for me as well. And I think that I might list my first event soon as well. And like to others, I think that Salon is something different for everybody. And if your approach is that no matter like what happens, you will learn something from that and get something from that, then I think you are ready to host.
Yes, I love that as a closing statement. Woohoo! Well, yeah, so we'll be sending a follow-up email for everyone that RSVP'd with some of the resources and stuff. And we will also be having regular host trainings from now on twice a month, so every 2 weeks. So stay tuned for us to talk more about that. I forget what next time's topic is. I think it might be around actually how to find a good topic or like how to write a good listing. It's one of them. But yeah, we'll probably acknowledge both topics during that training anyway. So yeah, you can expect more information on that. But in the meantime, we would love for you guys to list a salon with us. We'll be sure to give it lots of love and help you, yeah, find your people and the topic you want to host on. So yeah, feel free to email me, Yuri, Nikki, if you need anything. But yeah, with that said, we're going to conclude this today. Thanks again for coming and hope to see you next time.
Wait, can I ask one quick question before everybody goes?
Sure.
Okay, it's kind of a weird question. What Zoom view are you guys?
What Zoom what?
Like what Zoom view are you guys using? Everybody, are you looking at the like, is it just me and your picture-in-picture in screen? Is it everybody? Is it, you know, just the tap the mic screen, whatever that says? What are you guys looking at?
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I look at myself when I talk because I guess self-centered like but I think that yeah, I tend to like look at myself. I have like everyone else in gallery view, but I look at me. So I can kind of look over at everyone else if like I want to check real quick, but I get anxiety from like watching other people's response to me. So looking at how I'm talking makes me feel like we got this. It's okay. Like, don't be nervous. You know, so like that's how I So I mean, that's a good question though, but yeah, I don't know. How do any of you guys have any insight? Because you know,
Yeah, I'm quite the opposite. So like I actually like I hide my camera view, and that has really helped me. Like I just looking at myself, even if I'm not talking, just I don't know, it just doesn't vibe well with me. So I hide my camera view and I just look at gallery view most of the time. And usually if it's more of a salon that so it's like a super salon or there's an interview, I'll maybe hide the gallery view because there are like 50 people. But yeah.
Whatever gives you less anxiety, because again, whatever, you know, because like self-trust is great, everyone's friendly, trust yourself, we love you, and we still know that everyone's going to be anxious anyway. Like I was like super and still am super anxious, so I just look at me, but some people don't want to do that, so look at other people. So yeah, like Cassie's like my self-view is off, and on some days, yeah, I don't want to look at me either. So it depends. But I do suggest to look at one place instead of flitting around because it can like distract you if you don't if you're trying to remember what you want to say too. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does. I was I guess just kind of wanting some insight. Like I know I was making my own observations about like how I responded to the different views, and it gave me that question of just like, well, what is everyone else looking at? Like, what is everyone else looking at? How does that feel? Like I think I would be really interested to see what it's like when there is some direction on that, like as a host, if you were to, obviously if it makes it unenjoyable for the person, don't do it, but like just to try the gallery view, because I found that I was responding very differently to even the same speaker in that sort of, I don't know what it's called, but your face and my face versus the gallery view. Like I felt like the gallery was, it gave me that salon feel and made me feel a little bit less nervous because it reminded me of the fact that I'm not in a FaceTime call. Like probably no one is looking at me if I'm not talking. And so I think, I think it could be a fun thing to play about, hosts, future hosts, thinking about, not just like what we're saying, but also the AV aspect of the experience and what could we see if we bring people into the same one intentionally.
Gotcha. Cool. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Nice talking to you guys.
We're gonna hop off. Bye.
Bye, guys.